Hello, everyone, and welcome in. My name is Bryce Koon as we get ready to talk about a sloppy performance by the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets on Sunday. Not what you want to see, not what you wanted to see, especially coming off of a game where you dominated an FCS opponent, a chance to really start the season out with a bang. They couldn't do it, and we're going to kind of break it down what went wrong, what to make of this team heading into a much needed bye week. That and more on tonight's episode of Swarm Talk, brought to you by the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to play that again. But welcome in. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to a show that tonight, we're doing this a little bit earlier, obviously, big game for the Falcons tonight on Sunday Night Football at home against the Chiefs. But we're going to talk a little bit about this Louisville, Georgia Tech game. Overall, I think that I've seen a lot of different takes on this. I decided to not go live last night. And one, I wanted to kind of really be able to see the whole game in totality. And then also wanted to be able to really kind of look at maybe some more of the the analytical stuff of this to really kind of get a feel of this game. I want to start this show off tonight by talking about this. You know, I'll say this first. Louisville's a good football team. Jeff Brom, and you saw it on display on Saturday. This is an experienced head coach going against a head coach that is still learning and growing. And that's not a knock on what Brent Key and Georgia Tech are. You're constantly evolving. You're constantly growing as a staff. That's what he's doing, especially with the new defensive staff. So, on the other side, you got Jeff Brom, who's been doing this for a long time. I've mentioned so many times on our college football show and on this show, if you are winning at Purdue, then you're a pretty good football coach. Now he's at Louisville where they have better talent. Tyler Shuck's a solid quarterback, only threw 19 passes, 269 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, a quarterback rating of 222.1. He was just highly efficient in what he wanted to do. Completion percentage is 68%. They didn't run the ball that well. So I think that was a positive light in terms of, they didn't have their starting running back, which I think hurt them a little bit. You couldn't guard Ja'Cory Brooks, the Alabama transfer, who, regardless if people want to talk about transfer down, he's still the same player in terms of the evaluation that you thought he might be. So I will say to that point, this is something where I think that you just lost to a team that out executed you. And we can talk about the X's and O's. We can talk about a lot of different things. I think the biggest thing that we can, say though, is that Georgia Tech did not execute in this football game. Georgia Tech did not, bottom line, they just didn't play well enough to win. And I think Haynes King said it well in the post game. He's saying essentially, we have to execute better in the fourth quarter. And, to me, it's just one of those things where despite everything, you still had a chance to go win this football game. And you just couldn't execute. We can talk play calling. We can talk a lot of different things, here in a bit. But I did want to kind of touch off with that. Louisville's a solid football team, and Georgia Tech. And I mentioned this. And it kind of came to fruition. You can't win this game with just Haynes King, and that's not a knock on who Haynes King is. It's just not how this team is built to be a winner. When we saw this team have success, especially last season, it was because you had a dominant rushing attack that allowed Haynes King to be the best version of himself. You really don't have a chance when you just have him out there. And to Haynes King credit, 21 to 32, 147, and a half quarterback rating and 312 yards through the air. Like he was efficient as well. He didn't put the ball in harm's way, and that's something, outside of the one play, which I will say that's an awful play. The play where he tries to pitch, and Brent Key, and it was kind of hard to hear in the post-game press conference. Brent Key kind of said, and people can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's, to me, he said it was like an option play, that he had the option to do that. I don't think or know why he would elect to do that. It's trying to play a little bit of the hero ball that got him in trouble last year. He really hasn't done that this season. but I do believe that that was a bad decision, and I think he would say that. I think he would say that. Faulkner, Winky, everyone would say that you can't make that decision. And we're talking about the defensive touchdown that they scored, where King throws the backwards pass and it gets batted down in the end zone. Louisville recovers it in for a touchdown. You can't make that play. I mean, that's just a bottom line. Bottom line, you can't do that. And to people's point about this game, the fourth down play calling, I don't know if it's a pride thing. I have zero clue. I mean, Brent Key went in after the Florida State game and said, "Hey, we run the ball," and we know it's something that he wants to be able to do. They haven't done it. I mean, you had 37 carries for 98 yards in this game. You averaged 2.6 a pop. I mean, that's not going to win you football games. It almost won you this one, but you can't do that week in and week out and absolutely you absolutely you have a chance to winning a football game. If you ran the ball at 3.5 yards per pop, you probably win this game. So there, I don't understand all the play calling, inside the goal line in terms of, if it works, it pays off. It is what it is. But too many times Georgia Tech was getting stuffed in certain situations, and you can't play this game. But if you do take out Haynes King's 26-yard run, that number does go down significantly, almost to below 2 yards per carry. But you can't. I mean, that is what it is. But Louisville didn't run the ball well either, and that's kind of part of the thing too. That we talked about the turnover by Haynes King, which was a bad decision. I think that's very very evident that that's just a bad play. But overall, I mean, this just came down to despite everything, okay, despite not being able to run the ball, despite not being able to do certain things, you still entered into the fourth quarter with a chance to win the game. It's 20, it's and apologies, it's 24 to 17 in the fourth quarter. You've got the ball on the one. If you take the points, okay, it's 24 to 20. But even if you don't take the points, you still get the safety and you still have another chance. And you're just not able to execute offensively. A lot of people, and like I've seen the comments have ranged from very much out there on Buster Faulkner, which I think is complete overreaction of that he's this awful coordinator. But I do think that this is different. I think that this is interesting in terms of what's happening in the play calling room on some of these things. Do they not feel comfortable? I mean, look, one of my big worries in the offseason was if they tried to make Haynes King not as aggressive in that high risk, high reward type of gunslinger, does that take away some of the better aspects of his game? And maybe it has. I mean, he's only thrown one interception, but Haynes, some people saying, and look, the backup quarterback is always the most popular player on the field until he gets thrown in there. I think Zach Pyron's time can come. I think Zach Pyron is a good quarterback. I think he could win you a game if need be. But Haynes King's not the problem for this offense. Haynes King's the legitimate reason that you're 3-2 heading into this bye week. He's been about the brightest offensive standpoint outside of Malik Rutherford and Eric Singleton at points. He's been that. So I really don't understand the instance that Haynes King's not been good. He's been very good. He's carrying this team offensively, and he's not putting the ball in harm's way very, very often. So I don't understand that sentiment. Now, the play calling aspect we can sit there and talk about. They're not running the ball well. This offensive line has graded out terribly per PFF this past week. 34.8 pass protection grade. Yes, they didn't get to Haynes King a lot in terms of they didn't get home. They didn't get home one time, but forcing and rushing decision making and things like that, quarterback hurries and pressures. Those are things that you may not see in kind of the generic box score, but that was happening to Haynes King. And I think that disruptive, that's the biggest thing I take away from rewatching the film this afternoon. Louisville's front seven was disruptive at times with this offense line. Ooh, sorry. Keelan Rutledge, he struggled I think in the passing game and in terms of just being able to combat the guy and keep the guy in front of him. This offensive line didn't play the cleanest game. Obviously we know that in terms of the run game, but the passing game as well is something they just weren't very good at. And so when you don't play like that, this is the result that you get. And despite all of that, you still had a chance to win the game. So by that aspect of this, is, and I want to start some comments. I don't have Ralph in here tonight. it tells me this team's not awful, and I think people are reverting way back into people. This is the bottom line. A lot of some of the fans have zero clue how to act when you win or you lose. It can't constantly be pinging from one end of the spectrum to the other. This team is about an average team who has glimpses of growth, and it has some things holding them back at times. That's a large. I would say that's a pretty large amount of or robust amount of college football teams. It's pretty average. They've got some good players. They've got some moments where they say, "Hey, we can move into that next tier," and then you know uh, they've got things where where it holds them back at times, and maybe the play calling, maybe it's a decision here or there, but overall, like, I think running the football is something that I think a lot of people are surprised about that it hasn't been as explosive as it was last season. Shout out to GT fan South Recruiting on X because he did talk about this, and I wanted to kind of elaborate on the point he was making about the guard center guard combination. It's not working. And I'm not saying that there needs to be a switch or something like that, but I'm talking about the interior of the offensive line is not getting the same push as it did last year. They were blowing guys off the ball. I mean, they were winning at the point of attack. They were creating, I'll call it a halo, but they were creating essentially a buffer zone between whoever was running the football and that first line of defense because they were getting such a nice push. They were creating a 1 to 2 yard gap to where now the running back had, Jamal Haynes, Trelane Maddox, who I will say I do like Trelane Maddox a lot. Um, but they were creating this buffer zone to where running back could then do his job, use his vision to be able to decide where he needs to go with the football. You're not seeing that a lot. It's a lot of having to make a guy miss and do certain things. So offensively, I think this group is close. I think that it's just a product of cleaning some things up, and I think you get to a point where you have a bye week at about the best possible time. I mean, you get to having a bye week where you can reset. You've played 5 games. I mean, I get that the whole talk was Louisville's played. This is going to be Georgia Tech's 5th game. Louisville is going to be their 3rd game. It is what it is. I mean, that's the nature of what it is. You can't do anything about it. I understand, but that's not an excuse of why you lost. Despite every single excuse that might be made, you still had a chance to go win this football game on Saturday, and you didn't. So, you know, with this game or with this upcoming week, you go back to the drawing board, you figure out, you work on some combinations because that on the offensive side of the football, and that's kind of where I wanted to talk about this. The interior offensive line is not getting the push they did last season. And you're asking Haynes King to do so much. I go back to what Brent Key said at Boston against Boston College. We can't rely on him to win every single game for us. Haynes King is a playmaker. Haynes King is an improviser, but he's got to have help. Anyone in the country does. There's very few players that can do that by themselves and be successful, and those guys are Heisman Trophy winners and/or #1 picks. So I think that offensively, I mean, Malik Rutherford 7 for 113, Eric Singleton 5 for 88, Chase Lane 4 for 2022. Christian Leary obviously no longer with the program, so you're going to have to get some more guys in there. I'd like to see some more plays drawn up for Avery Boyd. That seam route that Haynes hit him on. That that seam route that Haynes King hit him on, I mean, that was a beautiful play design. A tight end out there hitting him right up the seam. I think Jamal Haynes needs to get the ball more opportunities in space. That would be something that I would stress this week of how do we get these playmakers the ball in space and allow them to do what they need to do? Because the passing game has been quite nice. It's the running game. And what is that? Is it a combination? Is it, hey, the inside zone, is just not there for us right now? Just bottom line, I think that it's an issue, and we'll have to see how it works out. I mean, I really truly don't know um, what they could pinpoint that on. I don't quite know, and I think that that's something they have to figure out. You take this week to do just that. So that's kind of the offensive side of things. You know, when I was kind of looking at some of the stats and the breakdown of this game, and I went back and watched defensively, like, we're just gonna call it how it is. We've always done this on this show. Um, I I think that we have to have a tough conversation about the linebacker position and the ability to cover in space. I don't think that as of right now, you have an option currently with what we've seen. I think that the options may not be playing of a guy of who's best suited. Like, let's just, I don't know if Kyle Eford's best suited for coverage right now. I don't think it. I don't think it is. I mean, I'm not, this, we're not, we're not publicly coming after a kid. It just hasn't been good. I mean, it hasn't been good. And people fall in love with the neck roll and they fall in love with that old school vibe. And that's cool. Like, it is what it is. But it's, Tyler Shuck picked on him, absolutely picked him apart. And they identified it every time. And I mean, so it's not, I don't care if people think it's rude, then just you need to stop watching football because that's just what it is. I think he's a good run stopper. At times he gets lost in, he gets lost in transition. There were a couple of plays like that. But Tyler Shuck in this Louisville offense dominated in terms of running the ball just enough, dominated in terms of the play action. You go look at the play action passes, linebackers were being fooled. They were having to they were getting sucked in and trying to get out really quickly, and then Shuck makes that beautiful pass in the first quarter to Ja'Cory Brooks with Saeed Gibbs draped all over him, and it's still completed. So I just don't love the linebacker position in coverage right now. I think it's a liability for everything that your secondary might be improved in, or everything that your front seven, your defensive line might be improved in. Sorry, still battling this cold. For everything that you had those, it's just not. It's offsetting what you have with the linebacker position right now. If you're going to run, and people talk about 4-2-5, you've got to have some athletic dudes. I mean, you've got to have guys that don't necessarily need to be taken off the field in certain situations. And I think right now we're seeing. I think right now we're just seeing what people are doing in terms of the linebacker position, what they're doing to it. I mean, they're picking on Kyle Eford in coverage. Like it's not a slight against the kid. It's just it's what's happening. So like I think Taj Butler is a kid that can be that for you. He's very athletic. He's going to have to be that eventually. But I just don't know how much more times you can send 44 out there in obvious passing down, because it's just if he's man, whatever it is, it's going to be very interesting. So, a couple plays, they were killing Georgia Tech with crossing routes, by the way. Absolutely. Eford got lost in coverage on one of them. The touchdown pass, it's a beautiful clear out route. I mean, it's a beautiful clear out route that worked to perfection because you don't have the speed or the ability to stay with a guy across the formation. They identify man coverage. They're able to kind of run the crossing route, and it works because their guy is more athletic and can get across the field more than your guy can. So, I mean, I think that's another thing that when you just kind of look at what they were able to do. They drew up some good plays. I mean, the clear out route is if you know they're going to do that, and they kept running it. They kept running either a clear out or a crossers route, and they kept having the ability to really just do whatever they wanted in terms of, hey, we're going to drag this guy across the middle of the field. We know that your linebackers can't stay with them, and we're going to let our athletes out athlete yours. That's what they did. So I think that this is I think it's a situation of where it's not as bad as it seems. This team is not terrible by any means, but you're just not really. I mean, you had three rushes of 10 yards or more in this game. Two of them were by Haynes King, and then one of them was by Jamal Haynes. One was obviously the first one was Haynes King's touchdown run for 23 yards. But you can't really like, folks. You can't hate on Tyler Santucci. You can't hate on this defensive staff. It's what I said in the preseason. This team is about what I thought they would be. And I think people kind of got offended by that. People kind of got their feelings hurt a little bit in terms of, well, what does that mean you don't like? No, it just, they're still building. I mean, I think that the defensive staff can be good. I don't think you have the Jimmies and Joes of what you want yet. And it's not an indictment on any the character or how personal it is for people. It's not a personal attack. It's just you go back to what Santucci had last year at Duke. They had veteran players that understood what he and Elko wanted to do, and guys they liked in that system. And let's just be honest, like in the front seven for Georgia Tech, I think that you have some bodies, but they're just not difference makers for you. They're not. You don't have a difference maker. I think Vandenberg's been nice at times. I think Gore can make a difference. He had a tackle in this game, but Romello Height has been okay. He had a tackle for loss, but he hasn't been the pass rusher that people are like, oh, he's not on the ACC watch list. Well, you're seeing through 5 games why he's not, and that's just is what it is. Like you're seeing through 5 games why we all had these concerns about the defense because you just don't have that yet. You're trying to squeeze, let's say it's an orange, you're trying to squeeze every ounce out of this group that you can. And that's what they're trying to do. And then they're going to get into the portal, they're going to get into high school recruiting and hopefully the development of the younger guys and move forward because this just really isn't it. I mean, Zeke Biggers is a big body, but it hasn't. He's being neutralized, and he's not being a massive difference maker. It shows up in spurts. It is not a consistent threat, and that's just is what it is. Why did I not get a water before I hopped on this show? So all of that to say, I go to the comparison factor here. The play calling, it is what it is. I don't really. I mean, we can talk about that later in the week. We're going to do a call-in show this week for Georgia Tech fans, where we're going to talk about that. You just didn't execute. You really didn't. Offensively, you're not hitting on explosive plays like you did last year. The lack of a run game is hurting you, and Haynes King's keeping you afloat. Um, you've got to figure that out this over the bye week because the next 2 games are must wins in terms of getting to a bowl game or having a chance to go to Charlotte. You have to win these next 2 games. Duke, I mean, we'll see. You get them at home off the bye week. North Carolina, I know everyone saw what happened against them, James Madison. But I'm just going to tell you this, folks. Like, that's how I feel about it. Like, if there is anything that college football has shown us this year, and we all need to understand this and be educated on this, it's that you cannot. You have to look at this sport from week on a week to week basis. You cannot cultivate themes based off of what's happened because you just don't know. Different teams are going to show up. Different things are implemented, and a different version of that North Carolina team could show up in 3 weeks. A different version of the Duke team, a different version of Georgia Tech could show up in these next 2 weeks, and you could dominate both opponents. So I just genuinely believe here that you're sitting with a situation of can you elevate enough and improve enough in this bye week to win the next 2 games in front of you and then see what happens against Notre Dame. That has to be the kind of the conversation. Bryce, if you could wave a magic wand and fix one problem Tech has right now, what it would be? This is what it would be easily a dominant front seven. That's what it would be because I think, and I'll get back to it. I think offensively, you didn't change enough personnel wise to not be that good. You can figure that out. You should be able to figure that out. You should. 'Cause that's what they're getting paid to do to make the adjustments. So that's what. But a dominant defensive front. If you have a dominant defensive front, this team's probably undefeated. That's what I would say at least. And I'm talking about like a top 10 pass rusher. That's what I would. That's what I would want. We needed more help, better help over the top. Rex says at safety with number one, we struggled being an island with him in the cornerback. Yeah, at times you did. At times you did. Andy says, could you switch linebackers on obvious passing plays? I mean, Andy, a lot of teams do that. Like in this, I'm not insulting your intelligence here. I'm just saying in general, like that's a very common practice. So I mean, Taj Butler's getting playing time. I don't know. I'm not in practice, and the people who go to practice aren't in practice long enough to really see these things because that's how Georgia Tech conducts the things. And a lot of programs across the country aren't going to give you an hour and a half worth of watching practice. Are the other linebackers that far behind in terms of development at the position to where Eford is the best option in coverage? That would be my question. Is there an opportunity for someone else? That's what I would that's what I would say. Couple comments here. David says, David, new member on the show. Appreciate you, David. I don't know why fans expect Tech to win every game. We are rebuilding the program. David, I've been saying this for 2 years. It's this isn't going to be a flash in the pan type program. It's going to be a gradual build. Rex says the key is on the hot seat, and Buster is a horrible coordinator. People have lost their minds. Yeah, it's reactionary. It's reactionary, and it's rock dwellers. So I don't. I know. I kind of talk about it right here with this. You can't make the decisions that Georgia Tech made on Saturday combined with the inability to execute at times and expect to win the football game. It's kind of what it boils down to. Um, you didn't get dominated; you outgained them in yards, but you can't make some of the decisions that you made, both coaching and player decisions, combined with the inability to execute in certain situations and win a football game. You just you just can't do that. It just kind of is what it is. So we'll see. I mean, this is a much needed bye week, and we'll see what happens. I'm curious. I'm interested to see what comes out of this bye week because defensively you've got to find something because either this is what I'll say. We either need to see this group dial up pressure from all sorts of angles to offset some deficiencies on the back end of the defense and just in totality of this defense, which there are deficiencies. There are deficiencies in this defense. We either need to see a change in scheme or we need to see because I don't or we need to see this offense finally realize what they're doing because the run game being this bad doesn't make a lot of sense to anybody. I mean, they're just not executing. They're getting the Syracuse game and this Louisville game, and even the Georgia State game to a certain extent, you got manhandled in the trenches at times. That's that's you know, I think this is just kind of where we're at in terms of this team. Now, look, we could be sitting here a month from now, and you're 5-2, and folks, let's read. I'm not going to move the goalpost back. Like I'll say this: this loss is disappointing because you could have won, but folks, this is I don't know what the expectation for this team was supposed to be. Like, did we think? Let's go back to August 30th, heading into the season. If we would have sat here and said Georgia Tech's going to be 3-2 heading into the bye week, the general population of Georgia Tech fans would have been like, "Okay, sounds good. All right." Now, people might misconstrue that as being, you want to win every game. I get you want to win every game. That's not the realistic viewpoint of this team right now, where they're as a program. But you go into the bye week 3-2, you're like, all right. Now, the way that they did it, I think beating Florida State changed a lot of people's expectations for the season, which it can. But now that we're back to maybe what would have been nice in terms of the expectation into the bye week, we can't move the goalposts back on certain things. We can't move the goalpost on expectations. You're 3-2. It's you're 3-2. I don't think you've played a dominant game yet outside of VMI. So it is what it is. You see if you can. I mean, I still think this team can get to 7 wins. I still think this team can get to 7 wins. That's where I sit with it. You get to 7 wins, you get an 8th win in a bowl game. Yeah, you hate that you lost to Syracuse, you hate that you lost to Louisville, but look, I mean, you're a middle tier ACC team right now trying to get up there into that tier 1. And that's what you're trying to do. That's what a lot of people thought you were. That's what a lot of people that's what people thought that you were. That's what a large portion of people on the show thought that you were. And it just is what it is. I mean, you just got out executed. The 2 games in conference that you have lost, they just played better than you. And so, TDJ says Syracuse and Louisville are not that much better than we are. Yeah, I mean, it is. I would disagree with this. True, but after seeing how we play, we should be undefeated. I think you've dominated one team, and it's VMI. That's my take on it. I don't think you should be undefeated. Could you? Yeah, you could be. should you know based off the way you've played, the Florida State game could have gone either way. So you could be 2-3. But I think it's interesting. Nancy says think the ACC is up for grab. Miami looks good. I think it's Miami and Clemson right now, and then it's a jumbled mess of teams after that. But we'll have to see. But just kind of bottom line to end tonight's show. And once again, sorry that I'm not feeling well, and we're gonna get some better quality here in terms of me not having to cough into the mic every single 15 seconds. You have to execute better. You can't make the decisions you make and be able to think that you can win the football games that you need to win. And it just is what it is. I think they've, you go into this bye week, you got to figure out what's going up front on the offensive line. Like I said, they're not getting the push that they got last year. What's the deal with that? And then defensive line wise, you've got to create chaos, which Georgia Tech has not done a lot of this year. They've done the past 2 seasons. They have not done this year. Or you got to figure out the middle of the defense. I mean, it can't. I don't think that you can get in. I don't think you can go through the rest of the schedule with that personnel grouping. I don't think that you can go into the schedule with that personnel grouping and expect much change. It's not a knock on Kyle Eifert. I just don't think that's what he's best suited as. It's just an evaluation. And the FNB Quan, I think FNB Quan is a Louisville fan. Appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We talk college football on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then we have a Georgia Tech show here on the channel. But appreciate you tuning in. GT scored 3 points in the second half. You are not on Louisville level. Yeah, they didn't execute. Louisville executed very well. Louisville's got a good football team. This is what I keep trying to tell people. Jeff Brom is one of the more underrated coaches in college football. As a Tech fan, you might not like it, but they do a good job at what they're doing. Tyler Shuck is a better quarterback than Plummer was last year. And guys, he dotted up. He dotted up this defense at times. He's got a good arm. He had some good touch. He was layering his throws very well. I was impressed with that. I was impressed with that. I think that they've got a good football team. They didn't have their starting running back defensively. They created chaos. That's what they did, and they were disruptive in the middle, and they gave your offensive line fits. Nancy Pie says the run up the middle hasn't worked. Not sure why we keep going for that in critical plays. Nancy, I mentioned this earlier. I genuinely believe that this might be a pride thing because I didn't understand that. I get that and people will say, well, if it works, then no one says anything about it. Well, true, but that's football. It didn't work. And you've seen that your offensive line's not getting a push. In the 4th and goal situation, I'll give my take on this. The 4th and goal and then the 4th and 1 situation. I think that the best type of pass, the best type of play is put the ball in the hands of number 10, but give him more options. Let's run an RPO out of this. Let's give him an opportunity to pass the ball, to hand the ball off, or run the football himself. The strict run up the middle, whether it's a read, a give or not, I get that. But you have to give the vast options to your best player. And Haynes King's the best player on this offense. Best player on the team. You have to do that. That's what it is. Clayton says the jet touch pass. Well, too bad Christian Leary's not here to run that. He's good at that in the game. So I don't know. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, this team, they're not as bad as people want to make it out. I don't understand that. The 4th and goal with a half for the first down. Why not Pyron? We've seen them do that. I understand that completely there, Nancy. Why can't Haynes King be in that formation? Is that the best possible play that you have for number 10? That's my question. I don't think it was. Not just because it didn't work, because I don't think it gives him the full arsenal of options that it would in other ways. So I think Pyron could convert in that situation, of course, but I don't know why that's necessary thing when you have a guy who your whole offense runs through. That's kind of my take. All right, fellas, we appreciate everyone tuning in. Thanks so much. Once again, sorry for being coughing in the microphone. It is what it is. Georgia Tech loses this one 31-19. Just sloppy. Like I said, you average 2.6 yards per carry. Yeah, it's not going to win you football games. Especially when your identity that you say it is least to run the football, and you're not doing that. And teams are stuffing you on it, and that's kind of what it is. So you got to go back to the drawing board during this bye week, and you got to figure that out. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think this is a very imperative bye week. It's one where you have to really figure out who you are. What is the identity of this team? Is this going to be a group that is going to rely on Haynes King to win football games, or can this run game turn it around? Defensively, I think it's got to get more aggressive. I think it does. I think they need to be playing. I don't know. I wouldn't say necessarily more man and then some man blitzes, but I think they've got to draw some stuff up because you've got to get this group kick-started in terms of getting some tackles for loss and creating some havoc. So it'll be interesting to watch. My name is Bryce Koon, Storm Talk. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button. Hit that notifications bell so you know when we go live. We'll be live tomorrow night, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, talking college football. It's going to be a lot of fun. Big week. And for Tech fans, you got North Carolina and Duke this week, so you get a little scouting report on those two teams heading into Saturday. And once again, we're going to have a call-in show this week, and we're also going to probably get a special guest on the show for Tech fans. It'll be a lot of fun. My name is Bryce Koon. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.